are we our own worst critic? Why can we be so accomplished and yet beat ourselves up incessantly? Dr. Nick joins us this morning to answer that question.
Good morning.
Good to see you.
Good morning, Whitney.
You know what struck me is I was interviewing Ernest Gaines, and I said, what do you want people to remember you by? And he just said all of his shortcomings. I should have written more. I should have worked harder. And I was struck by that. I'm like, you're one of Louisiana's greatest writers ever. I mean, he broke down a lot of the barriers between races with his pen, and yet he's not enough.
Those who would accept the notion of original sin, that somehow there's a propensity in us to not be enough, to not feel like we've done enough, a propensity for us to say, I'm not done yet, or when is it done? And it's that drive. It's really almost like a divine problem. We want to be God instead of accepting our human limitations.
Because there is no perfection in this world.
There is no perfection in this world, and which is why in the Great Serenity Prayer we always ask for reasonable happiness in this world. Reasonable. And reasonable happiness is really we do the best we can given the circumstances. One of the things that struck me was that you notice he's in his 80s.
Right.
Okay, so he's answering the question from his 80s and from his accomplishments, okay? He's not really looking back and seeing what he was capable of doing when he was 20 or 15 or 10. Really, the circumstances are very different.
Okay.
The way I behave and choose to act today, I wasn't capable of that when I was 15, 20, 30. We grow. Our best changes. What really struck me was I wish I had written better.
I know.
I mean, how
much more brilliant can one be?
And yet, Whitney, I do think that we have to respect his ability to critique himself constantly and ongoingly. Again, we talked about critique before. It's just that there was, and again, I want to be very careful. There seemed to be a sadness, which is why I think it was probably more grief, more grief. But I do want to say that, you know, what we'll ask questions very often. Do you have any regrets? Absolutely not. I have regrets. Do you have regrets?
Sure.
I have regrets. You know that great song, My Way? He says, regrets, I've had a few.
Right.
But then again, too few to mention. See, there's someone who was able to look at his accomplishments objectively instead of just what he didn't get done or his failures.
What is it in us, Nikki, and maybe it's what you were referring to earlier, that we have that drive, that we have that, I've got to be more, I've got to be better, I've got to be 110%. And is it a good thing? I mean, can it be a good thing?
You know, I laughingly look at you as my model because you think you can do 110%, and sometimes you do. But I also think, again, it's partly driven by human nature, which I do think is clouded by this constant ongoing surge to I'm not there. But I also think it's clouded by our childhood, by our development. That somehow we live in an environment, we're in relation with the world and family that says, oh, you can do better. I certainly got it. I think most of our audience probably got it. You can do better than that.
Sure.
That's good, but you can do better than that.
Sure.
Huh? It's enough, but is it really enough? Which is why I always say at the end of the day, I've done enough.
Oh, good.
I've done enough.
And that was my next question. How can we be more gentle with ourselves?
We basically say, I've done enough. Somebody gave a quote gave me a quote from mindfulness the other day that I just really, really liked very much. And I'll ask you, when you do the dishes, do you do the dishes in order to get them done, or do you do the dishes in order to do the dishes?
I do them to get them done.
Okay, and you see, that's a problem. Would you believe that that's...
No.
Because when you get... you're never in the moment.
I don't like washing dishes.
All right, think of something else.
Nothing about it.
When we're always trying to get it over with, we're never in the moment. There's always something else pulling.
When I'm writing a story, oftentimes I just want it to be so good.
Are you in it?
Oh, I'm in it.
Okay.
I'm probably in it too much. Because at some point I need to detach myself and go, let's get her done.
Enjoy these things you're getting done. They're not just things you want to check off.
Right.
That really helps, I believe, let us live in the moment and not so much in regret. I wish I had done that. I wish I had done that. Because again, we're going to, Whitney, just make sure we're clear about this and then we'll go. We live in relation to the world. We live in relation to the environment. We live in a relationship with circumstances. We're limited as to what we can do. His circumstances limited him. Wouldn't you agree?
Right.
I'm not making a judgment. I'm saying that's the fact. Look at the way he was raised, and yet look at what he accomplished given the circumstances.
As a result of that. Right. Well, thanks, Nikki.
Great to be with you,
It's part of the
Whitney.
human condition.
Human condition, yes.
Yeah.
And how great it is to be human.
That's right. But
Bye,
be gentle
everybody.
with yourself
Be
this week.
gentle, yes. And remember, somebody come do her dishes.
Much more coming up with Weekends with Whitney right after this.